Peace and blessings, everybody. It's Tuesday, September the 19th, the year 2017. I'm going to go through the Turd, and when you hear me say the Turd, just substitute the word Bill Fulton. The Turd's book titled, The Blood of Patriots, How I Took Down an Anti-Government Militia with Beer, Bounty Hunting, and Badassery, written by Bill Fulton and Jeannie Devon, although Jeannie Devon probably did most of the writing. As we go through this book, you should know that I tried to put up a book review on Amazon.com. They told me that it went live, but it never did. So much for free speech and Amazon. You would think that somebody who buys a book should be able to provide a book review, but they did not allow my book review to be placed on Amazon, which again goes to show you the leanings of Amazon and their cooperation with this satanic government to cover up for their FBI informants. So let's get started. Oh, the other thing I want to mention before we get started is Bill Fulton is a flaming homosexual, and I'm going to prove that to you as we go through this book review. On page 10, let me flip to page 10. Bill Fulton writes, I submitted my enlistment paperwork a year early, hoping that they wouldn't notice the whole date of birth part. They did, but I figured it was worth a shot. Low risk, high reward, everything to gain, nothing to lose. So Bill Fulton knowingly submitted a form which was lying to the government in a false way. And so that shows you that his mindset is, he doesn't mind lying to the government, which means that as his work as an FBI informant, he doesn't mind lying to the government. Not only that, but there was a particular place in the book, if you've read it, where he claims that somebody walked into his store and was providing diagrams and plans to blow up a government building, and that's why Bill Fulton went to the FBI the first time. You've probably heard these see something, say something statements from the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, and that just opens the door for these, snitches, these guys who want to act like they're a secret agent man, to go tell the government that, somebody walked into my store and they said this or they did this. So the bottom line is that, if you're a snitch or a narc or a rat, the FBI definitely wants to play ball with you, and it makes you feel like you're a secret agent man as well. So just remember that on page 10, Bill Fulton didn't have a problem lying to the government, putting in a knowingly false form, or a form that he knew was not right. On page 17, he talks about getting kicked out of the Army. My question is, did he really get kicked out of the Army for medical reasons, or was it because he was a gay pole dancer? You say, Rudy, why you call him a gay pole dancer? I'm not calling him a gay pole dancer. Bill Fulton admits to dancing on a pole in a G-string. I would also like to verify that Stacy and Emma, who Bill Fulton refers to as his partner and his daughter, how do we know that, or how do we know that Stacy isn't Bill Fulton's gay lover and Emma isn't a golden retriever? I mean, Stacy met Bill Fulton at the strip club where Bill Fulton is dancing on a G-string, right? Don't take my word for it. Read the book. I mean, he admits dancing in a pole dancing and G-string. So, that goes to tell you that he's excessively homosexual. Matter of fact, as you read through this book, you're going to find out that Bill Fulton and Aaron Bennett and all the guys that Bill hung around are aggressively homosexual towards one another. It's like some sort of Greek fever homosexual warrior playhouse. Everything they did was about dominating each other sexually. It's laced throughout the whole book. And this dancing on a pole in a G-string, I think it was page 51. On page 49, Bill Fulton writes about one of his men that did a home invasion where he broke into somebody's home, and the guy has an erection, and Bill Fulton writes about admiring each other's boners. I mean, sexual arousal at the abuse of the helpless is a very deep form of evil, right? And it's related to child molestation, about dominating children. And Bill Fulton, I believe, is somehow tied into this pedophile ring in Alaska or Anchorage that's well known to have existed up there and within the FBI. And now he's bragging about it in a tell-all book. Just go read page 49 through 51, where they do a home invasion, and then Bill Fulton writes about after the home invasion, they brag about admiring each other's erections through their pants. And they had just did a home invasion with their guns drawn. That's incredibly evil. It's, you know, from reading this book, it's very possible that Bill Fulton originally had a crush on Schaefer, who on page, I think it was 78, he referred to Schaefer as a 15-year-old boy, even though Schaefer was in his mid-20s at the time and in a happy heterosexual marriage to a beautiful woman. I think it's very possible that Bill Fulton had a crush on Schaefer, and when Schaefer didn't return the homosexual feelings, because Schaefer's not a faggot, Bill Fulton acted like a scorned woman. Matter of fact, if you look on page 64, Bill Fulton compares Schaefer to Stacy, and Stacy is supposed to be Bill Fulton's wife. Yeah, it's right in the first paragraph of page 64. He compares Stacy and Schaefer together, so it's very possible that Fulton had a man crush, a faggot crush on Schaefer, and then he turned into a scorned woman. On page 66, the Turd brags gleefully about Operation Polar Pen, where the FBI corruptly strong-armed Alaska politics to help the Democratic Party. Polar Pen is an incredibly evil, corrupt situation where the FBI affected political outcomes in America. It should be incredibly illegal and treasonous, and should have the death penalty once you're convicted in a court of law. You know, for the FBI to meddle in political affairs. And yet on page 66, the Turd gleefully brags about Operation Polar Pen. On page 73, the Turd brags about tearing down the Republican Party apart from the inside, its own ranks, because he hates Christians and conservatives. Bill Fulton absolutely hates Christians and conservatives, and he was an FBI informant, and how appropriate is it that somebody working for the FBI is tearing down political parties in Alaska, in America. You know, Joe Miller is mentioned in the book. He's a Tea Party candidate, and he was in fear for his life. And so Joe Miller went out and asked for the protection of Bill Fulton's security team. That was a big mistake, by the way. There's a arrest that Bill Fulton did on a journalist that torpedoed the election of Joe Miller. And that's another example of Bill Fulton affecting the politics of Alaska. But the point is that if Joe Miller is afraid for his safety and he was a rising Tea Party candidate in Alaska, it's not inconsistent for Schaefer Cox to fear for his safety. And Schaefer's defense is that he feared for his life and he wanted to flee the state. And so the point is that if Joe Miller feared for his safety and was willing to reach out to this, Turd's security team, that Schaefer Cox felt the same way up in Alaska, where corruption and pedophiles ruled the day. On page 103, the Turd talks about murdering the mother of a litter of children. I'm going to say that again so you don't miss it. On page 103, the Turd Bill Fulton writes about murdering the mother of, quote, a litter of children. And he reminds his guys that they won't get their $500 if they kill her. That's the kind of man the turd is he's going to break into the house of this mother of what he refers to as a litter of children, and he reminds his guys, we don't get paid if we kill her. That's the kind of guy who wrote the book, and they want you to believe that he's a patriot to America. Only if your definition of patriot is a order-following Nazi Gestapo person. So after he reminds his guys that they won't get the $500 if they kill the mother, then he goes on to talk about shooting the parents in front of their children. On page 68, Fulton talks about how unacceptable it is for conservative Christians to be allowed to participate in and have an influence on elections, like he was on a mission to stop that. How corrupt is that? Go read page 68 and read about how Fulton was on a mission to stop conservative Christians from participating and influencing elections. On page 70, the turd writes about our AIP governor in his 90s, Joe Volger, and that Schaefer was a spokesman for a contingent in that political office. And so if Schaefer was a spokesperson for Joe Volger, which isn't, it's not appropriate to refer to Schaefer as being a fringe element. Schaefer was very much mainstream in Alaska politics when he was a rising star before the FBI targeted him and took him down. On page 79, the turd Bill Fulton says he wanted to bash in Schaefer's head against the wall because he hated Schaefer's moral beliefs. As you're reading the book, it's obvious that Brian Beasley is Aaron Bennett. Dark North Tactical is Far North Tactical. On page 89, the turd calls his gay playmate Aaron Bennett, and they talk about Schaefer moaning my own name in bed. That's his words. In other words, they talk about Schaefer, moaning his name in bed. That's very homosexual. Everything is homosexual power plays for the turd Bill Fulton. On page 90, Bill Fulton writes about visiting Aaron Bennett and missing each other. You can tell that Bill Fulton had a homosexual faggot crush on Aaron Bennett too. I was informed that Joe Miller had the lug nuts removed on his car and the people shot at Joe Miller's house. He knew that there were child molester mafias in Alaska, and they were pure evil, and they hated fundamentalist Christian federal judges like Miller. Also, they hated people like Schaefer Cox. Schaefer was charged with having a security detail at King Jesus North Pole television station, but the turd Bill Fulton did a security detail for Joe Miller on page 91. How come there was no conspiracy charge for the turd Bill Fulton when he did a conspiracy detail? Do only certain people get to do security details in Alaska? On page 92, the turd promises political payback. He writes, "Don't give support, don't get support." The turd, Bill Fulton, hated Norm Olson simply because he's a Baptist preacher. It's very possible that this FBI agent, Dirk Ellison, is actually Derek Espeland, for those of you who read the Pacer.gov court documents. Now, on page 119, the turd Bill Fulton says there were plans to attack the recruiting center, and that Bill Fulton the turd took those plans to the FBI, and I believe they were a fabrication. That he lied when he submitted his form to join the Army. I believe he, sees something, say something. He's just fabricating a lie to get into the FBI door. It's just like he lied to get into the Army. He's lying to the FBI so he can play secret agent man. No arrest was made. No plot was uncovered. It was all lies and make-believe from the turd Bill Fulton. Sandy Klein and Derek Espeland put the liar to work to get them some fabricated report on Schaefer before the 30-day window shut. The 30-day window is discussed on page 126. So when you get a turd snitch like Bill Fulton coming into the FBI, Sandra Klein and Derek Espeland know that they can put his services to good use, and they did. That's how evil the FBI is. That's why Schaefer Cox and Les Zerbe at the Blondie's meeting, when Les Zerbe said there is no plan, that's why Bill Fulton went nuts and threatened to kill Les Zerbe. When the turd Bill Fulton writes on page 135 and 137, you can tell that Schaefer was having great success politically in Alaska. They had to take Schaefer down because he was gaining mainstream momentum politically in Alaska. That's why they had to send operatives like Bill Fulton as a standard operating procedure to disrupt the free and fair political process from happening. This book brags about how they used Bill Fulton to disrupt a political process happening in Alaska. That is a treasonous behavior by the FBI and Bill Fulton. On page 138, Fulton says that he opened a beer for Schaefer, but then Bill Fulton drank the beer. Schaefer does not drink. I can guarantee you that. Every time that Schaefer's ever told me that he's met Bill Fulton has been out of control drunk. Schaefer has told me that the things that supposedly were direct quoted to Schaefer, that Schaefer didn't say those things. So that's more lies. So anytime it says Schaefer said these things, that's a lie. We know that Schaefer did not give a big criminal plan at Pike's Landing. Jeremy Baker can testify to that. Les Zerbe can testify to that. Bill Fulton was the one coming up with the violent plans, and when Bill Fulton gave the recording to the FBI told Bill Fulton to destroy it because they knew that it would ruin the narrative of Schaefer Cox having violent plans. Yeah. It's a huge crime for the FBI to destroy the recording at Pike's Landing. That's destruction of evidence in a criminal federal trial. And Scrocky and Bottini and Agent Westerhouse and Bill Fulton should all be in prison for the rest of their life for that one act alone. On page 143, It talks about Sandra Klein, who's obviously a key player because she's Bill Fulton's case agent. Scrocky told the court that Sandra Klein had nothing to do with the case except for a very minor chain of custody log-on physical evidence to be presented. This is, when Scrocky told the court that Sandra Klein didn't have a big part to play, that's because Schaefer's defense team could have asked Sandra Klein for all of her investigative notes. They could have subpoenaed all of her investigative notes because she was Bill Fulton's handler. But because they played down Sandra Klein's role, the defense team never got a chance to ask for that. On page 144, Bill Fulton even admits to filling out paperwork. But I wonder if Schaefer's defense team ever got a chance to view that paperwork. It's a Brady violation not to give it to Schaefer's defense team. On page 144, the turd admits that he went out on his own when he did all the threats against Schaefer. So even if the FBI claims they aren't responsible for the turd's threats, they knew about the threats and they even documented them. Then they hid those records from the defense team at trial, which is bad. Whether they told the turd to threaten Schaefer or not, it's still favorable evidence to Schaefer's defense team and a Brady violation to destroy it and hide the evidence.